Have you ever tried so hard to be liked that you forgot who you are? Have you ever obsessed over success and ended up anxious, empty, and still behind? You gave everything you cared, you broke, and they didn't care back. The viewer is pulled into a psychological chokehold of their own experiences, the feeling of giving too much, of overthinking, of being drained by the desire for control. Love, success, validation. Then, the revelation. Michel de Montaigne, a man born nearly 500 years ago, discovered a strange truth. When he stopped caring, truly stopped, life began to unfold. We tease the core idea. What if detachment isn't apathy, but liberation? What if indifference to results, opinions, and control is exactly what gives us peace and power? Montaigne said, "My life has been full of terrible misfortunes, most of which never happened." He knew. Most of our pain is manufactured in the mind. We frame the video. Today, we'll dive into the timeless philosophy of Montaigne, not to escape life, but to finally live it on your own terms. The illusion of control, why caring too much breaks you. Start from a personal story, someone who gave everything to save a relationship, only to lose themselves. Philosophy, Montaigne's view of human limitation. We try to control what cannot be controlled. Key quote, "A man who fears suffering is already suffering from what he fears." Montaigne examples, burnout of overachievers, tragic love stories of those who lost themselves for others, paralysis of perfectionists. Message, letting go of control isn't giving up, it's coming back to sanity. The tyranny of opinion, how others' judgments destroy our freedom. Start a modern teenager, broken by social media, crushed by online hate. Philosophy, Montaigne's radical honesty. He wrote essays that revealed his deepest flaws. Key quote, "I care not so much what I am to others as what I am to myself." Montaigne examples, lives ruined by public shame, suicide from reputation collapse, people becoming hollow shells of public expectation. Message, when you stop caring about what others think, you reclaim your soul. The myth of ambition, why chasing success often leads to misery. Start from a high-powered executive who made millions and ended life alone. Philosophy, Montaigne rejected politics and power to live a quiet life in a tower. Reading, thinking, and writing about being. Key quote, "The greatest thing in the world is to know how to belong to oneself." Montaigne examples, lives spent climbing ladders to nowhere. Celebrities who self-destruct the midlife crisis as modern message, ambition not aligned with inner peace is self-betrayal. The art of letting go, what happens when you truly stop caring. Start from a widowed old woman who finally finds peace in gardening years after loss. Philosophy, Montaigne's stoic influence, letting life be as it is. Key quote, "He who establishes his argument by noise and command shows that his reason is weak." Montaigne examples, Buddhist monks and detachment people who found joy after giving up the fight, the simple dignity of aging. Message, true strength is silent, and it begins with surrender. Science backs Montaigne, why detachment heals the modern mind. Start with a clinical psychologist describing the epidemic of anxiety and burnout. Bridge, ancient wisdom meets neuroscience. Scientific support, default mode network and overthinking, cognitive behavioral therapy CBT, and reframing care studies on detachment and mental resilience. Minimalism and mental health validation. Montaigne didn't just philosophize, modern psychology proves he was right. Quote, "The soul that has no fixed goal loses itself." Montaigne message, you don't need to abandon life, just the illusions that are breaking you. People ruin their lives by caring too much. Not because caring is a flaw, but because they invest their soul into things that will never love them back. It's the man who spends years obsessing over how others see him until his identity becomes a costume. It's the woman who sacrifices her mental health for her children, her marriage, her job, until there's nothing left to offer. It's the artist who deletes every creation because it wasn't perfect enough for people who were never paying attention. And the saddest part, they believe this is strength. That sacrifice will be rewarded. That the world notices when you bleed quietly. But Michel de Montaigne saw through all of it. He lived in a world of war, plague, and death, and yet his most radical discovery was this: when I stopped trying to be something, I began to exist. He walked away from power. He walked away from expectations. He built a tower, filled it with books, and wrote the most intimate, unfiltered philosophy of the self the world had ever seen. Montaigne wasn't interested in changing the world. He was interested in no longer being broken by it. And what he realized, what most people never dare to admit, is that the more you care about controlling life, success, image, people, the more everything slips through your fingers. This isn't about apathy. It's about freedom. There's a reason burnout is rising. Why anxiety is the language of an entire generation. Why authenticity has become rare, even in private. We live inside an illusion that peace comes from fixing everything. Montaigne knew the opposite. A man is not hurt so much by what happens as by his opinion of what happens. You suffer not because the world is cruel, but because you expect it to care that you're suffering. This video is not about giving up. It's about stepping out of the burning building. About realizing you are never supposed to carry this much. About learning, finally, how to live without shattering. Let's begin. The illusion of control. Why caring too much breaks you start with a statement that is true. Sad and undeniable. Every broken person you know once believed they could fix everything. There's a man in his 40s who hasn't slept properly in years. He wakes up in panic, thinking about deadlines. His wife barely recognizes him anymore, not because he's cruel, but because he's never present. His kids avoid his gaze. Not out of hate, out of fear they're interrupting his pressure. But he keeps going, because he thinks, if I just work harder, push further, control more, eventually it'll be enough. It never is. Michel de Montaigne saw this centuries ago. In a time when death came in the form of plague, sword, or politics, men still obsessed over the things they could not command: their fate, their legacy, their image. And Montaigne, who had seen his best friend die of the plague and had lost multiple children, realized something devastating. A man who fears suffering is already suffering from what he fears. This is where the illusion of control begins: in fear. Fear of being abandoned. Fear of being insignificant. Fear of being exposed as ordinary. And so we grasp, cling, perform. We control our diets to control our bodies. We control our partners. To avoid loneliness, we control our careers to feel secure. But deep inside, there's a secret you'll never say out loud. You're exhausted. Montaigne's wisdom. We are small. Montaigne was not a cynic. He wasn't trying to destroy your dreams. He was trying to liberate you from them. He argued that much of human suffering comes from forgetting our limits. We are animals with fragile skin and fragile minds, yet we walk around like gods furious. When life doesn't bow to our plans, we burn with ambition, and then we die. That's the comedy, he once reflected in his essays. He withdrew from politics, from power, from appearances, and spent his days writing brutally honest meditations about himself, his ignorance, his flaws, his thoughts. Not to boast, but to accept, control is a lie. You don't control outcomes, you barely control yourself. And that's exactly where freedom begins. Real life collapse. Control becomes a cage. Look around. The people who try the hardest to keep things perfect are often the ones who collapse first. Think of the perfectionist mother whose child rebels, and she sees it as a failure of her own soul. Or the entrepreneur who loses his business and can't look in the mirror, not because of the failure, but because he equated control with identity. Caring becomes a prison when it's rooted in fear. When every action becomes a defense mechanism. When every plan is a shield against the unpredictable, the turning point. Surrender as strength. This isn't a call to laziness. It's a call to clarity. Letting go of control doesn't mean giving up on life. It means releasing the fantasy that you're the master of it, Montaigne wrote. Not being able to govern events, I govern myself. This was his key insight. You do not control what happens, you control your relationship to it. When he lost his children, he grieved deeply. But he didn't rage at the world. He understood the fragility of everything, and from that understanding came peace. Conclusion. Why you must stop caring about the wrong things. You are not responsible for every outcome. You are not the hero of every story. You are allowed to rest. The sooner you stop trying to micromanage fate, people, and chaos, the sooner you'll find out that life still moves forward, and often, in better ways than you planned. Michel de Montaigne left behind this truth not in commandments, but in confession. My trade and art is to live, not to win, not to control, just to be, and in that being, he found something most never do. Peace that doesn't depend on anything going right. The tyranny of opinion. How others' judgments destroy our freedom. Child draws something at school proudly. He runs to show it to his teacher, his chest lifted, eyes glowing. She frowns and says, "That's not how a house looks." The child never draws again. Now he's 30. He scrolls through social media, deleting a caption 12 times. He watches his words around friends. He smiles when he wants to cry.